So it's time to return to Mordheim. Well, Mordheim as a game anyway, rather than a city. I've been collecting and building Bretonnian and Tomb King armies and getting very excited for the impending release of Warhammer the Old World. I really wanted to try out some Mordheim, and rather than set it in Mordheim, the city itself, I really wanted to set some games in the same narrative that I'm building for my games of Warhammer. The narrative I'm working on is very much still in development, but it's set in the Border Princes, and the terrain I built, and you'll have seen that in the last video for Mordheim I did on the channel, is also set in the Border Princes as well. So we have less ruined buildings, and that means a slightly different style of game, but it needed to fit the narrative of what was going on in that area. Thank you for all of those who have watched that build video and given me lots of hints and tips. I'll definitely be adding some more scattered terrain and along with a few of the other suggestions. Thank you to everyone who suggested a name for the inn. I had nearly 60 or 70 in the end. I managed to whittle them down to 5 for a poll, which is currently still live on my community tab. So please go and vote now, even if you haven't had a chance to think of a name yourself. I've been dipping into Empire in Flames, so thank you for the suggestions of that. That's definitely an excellent book for the kind of games I'm looking at. There's lots of rules for playing in the wilderness and definitely less sort of built up areas. And while I'm still in a town, some of the board is fairly open, so I'll definitely be making use of that and combining it with the standard rules. But welcome to Miniature Realms. My name's Stuart. In this video I'm going to talk through how my first warband, the Tomb Kings, was built and painted for the game. Thanks to the awesome resource that is Broheim, I was able to find out the rules for using Tomb Kings in the game pretty quickly. Town Crier issue number 18 with the Mummy's Return as its front page gave me all the rules I needed, and lots of information on Khemri and the Land of the Dead and the warband of Tomb Guardians, and I was soon on a path to buying and converting my existing miniatures into a small warband. I've picked up a fair amount of Tomb Kings on eBay over the last few months, ready for this Warhammer the Old World project that I'm trying to build and get quite a lot painted ready before the game to release. So I had a pretty good start. I had a Tomb Lord that I've already painted and done a quick tutorial on, so if you haven't seen that, do check that out as well. I had a Lich Priest ready to go, and I had lots of skeletons to use for my standard troops in the army. As I wanted to cover most things in the list, I did need to add a couple of Tomb Guardians, which I didn't have yet. The prices on eBay for those as new sets was crazy, and I was planning on waiting until they came back out. But I did manage to pick up a couple of plastic ones individually, were pretty pricey. I wanted to add a couple of Scorpions. I managed to find an old Citadel metal one on its own. Again, pretty pricey, but I planned to make some press molds of this. For the Acolytes, is something that doesn't really appear in the Tomb King's army. I thought I'd just kit bash these myself, and I decided to go with some Necromunda bits, choosing Cawdor Redemptionist bodies for the main parts of them, and then just using the extra heads and arms and weapons I had with my Tomb King sprues. So I started by plopping my Lich Priest in some ISO to strip the paints, and then the next stage was making my press mould of this old Citadel Scorpion. So this is Instamold. I've had it for years. Essentially you just pop it into some boiling hot water till it's really soft, press your miniature in, wait for it to set, then afterwards you press in some green stuff. Once the green stuff is set, you just peel away and trim off the excess, and you should have a copy. Now you don't get a perfect copy, and these are a little bit messy. It's an old sculpt as it is, but it will do for what I need it to, and it saves me buying another one of these at about £12 a pop. So I set about building and painting the rest of the miniatures. Next up was the Tomb Guardians, which I also picked up from a bit site. Now these are probably the most expensive versus what they're actually worth, but it is what it is, and I wanted to get this video done. So sometimes spending a little bit of money I get from revenue on overpriced miniatures on eBay is the way it goes. For the standard skeleton warriors, I had a really big box of eBay rescues, so it's just a matter of cleaning them up and rebasing them. And for these bases I'm using some 25mm squares because I want them to fit in my old world armies as well, and they are some 3D printed cobblestone ones, and I'll cover those in a later video on this. But the idea here is to make sure that they fit with my table and terrain that I've built for Mordheim. But I'm also, when I finish painting them, I'm going to add some sand texture to the bases as well, so they do blend in with the Tomb King army. So the acolytes were super easy to build, and you can see there, just by adding some skeleton heads and some arms, they look pretty good and will do the job. By that time, the Lich Priest had a good old soak and was pretty easy to scrub away the ancient paint. Now normally in a video like this I would turn to a full tutorial, but I've covered this paint job quite a few times with my initial Tomb Kings tutorial, and then the more recent Tomb King tutorial I did covering the basing as well, and how I intended to make it work for Mordheim and my army. So I don't really want to turn this into a really long full tutorial. So forgive me as I whiz through most of this painting, picking up the odd key point here and there, and if you do want that full tutorial because you'd like to paint something similar or pick out a certain technique or something, please do go and check out either or both of those previous two videos. If you've watched an awful lot of my tutorials, you'll know I talk about this all the time, so please forgive me, but I figured there may be a few new people coming along and finding these videos because of the Mordheim label on there and because of the interest in the old world at the moment. But I really like to paint miniatures, starting with Citadel Contrast and Vallejo Express Colour and Army Painter Speed Paint, and because of that I use a Zenithal highlight to start with. So I prime black, a heavy Zenithal white in most cases, not just top down but from the sides a little bit as well, and then finishing off with a dry brush of white a la slap chop. Now this isn't a new process, it is something that people have been doing for years, and the reason I do it is basically underpainting, and then when I put the base layers down using these quick paints, it provides me with some natural shadow and highlight already. But what I do after that is go on and paint fairly standard afterwards. I like to highlight up from that, so I'm just using these kind of speed paints to really get that base layer down and save some time. I really like the effect that it gives me. For miniatures like Undead, this really helps this process and makes it even more simple. The Skeleton Horde colour, which I've been using on my Tomb Kings from Citadel Contrast, is perfect over a Zenith primed bone miniature. The Scorpions were a little different. I actually painted them Black Legion, which is another Citadel Contrast colour. It still provides a little bit of a natural highlight there over the white. Then afterwards I used some colour shift from Green Stuff, and this is Darth Blue, and just painting that in over most of the miniature, leaving a little bit of black in the recesses, and you get this really nice sort of glistening, slightly shiny, chitinous effect from the shiny armour that some Scorpions may have. With both of those base colours down on all the miniatures, I'm using some hardened leather speed paint from Army Painter, and I'm covering most of the leather straps and things on all of the Tomb King miniatures. As one of my main spot colours for the Tomb King army, I'm using this Caribbean turquoise from Vallejo Express Colour. So it's a beautiful colour, and it really stands out against the bone colour and the red and the gold, which are the other two sort of accent colours that I'm using for the army. There's quite a few little areas of detail I want to pick out on the headdresses and things like that. I'm copying these, as I said already, from the scheme I've been using on my army, and you can be seen in the existing tutorials. But I also decided to use it on the robes for the acolytes. It will really make them stand out on the battlefield. As I mentioned previously, red is another one of my sort of spot colours, and it just works so well against this turquoise and the bone colour. It's fairly traditional for some of the schemes you see for Tomb Kings over the years from Games Workshop as well. I went on to pick out lots of the other little details. We've got bits of rope, we've got spear shafts and things like that. I'm just using a mixture of different woods from the Citadel Contrast range, things like wildwood and Sigil brown. For my Tomb King project, I also decided to paint all of my bandages black, or an off black rather than white, so that they stand out from the bone colour on the miniatures. I wanted to make sure that they didn't blend in too much, and it looked like these wraps and bandages had been buried in tombs for a long time, which of course they would have. I used black Templar contrast on all of the bases, and I just covered the whole stone area. You get that contrast effect with the natural highlight coming through. But later on I'm going to be adding lots of extra basing on here, including some pigments. It really makes it look a little bit more realistic. Once all the standard base colours were down, aside from the metallics, it was time to turn to the Necro Gold from the Scale Colour Metallics range. This is probably my favourite gold, and I use it all the time in most projects that require gold or a brass colour. It's absolutely fantastic. And for the final bit of the base coat, I'm using some black metal, also from the same Scale 75 Metallics range. Again, this is something I use on nearly every paint job I do. Now that all the base colours were down, it was time to start picking out the highlights. And if you want to see these stages in detail, please do go and check out those other videos, and I'll list all the colours that I use for highlights and tidying up and really making those colours pop. This is why I love contrast and speed paint and express colour and whatever the collective name is for all of these new style paints. I was never a kind of person that was just going to be happy whacking them down over a plain white prime, but using them as a tool to base coat to speed up my overall painting process, and it's definitely revolutionised the way I paint armies and helped speed things up loads. So here I am adding a little bit of basing texture. This is terrain, desert sand from AK, not covering all of the stones. I like the idea that the magic that's brought the Tomb Kings to life has brought a bit of the sand with. And here we have the finished Tomb King Warband hanging out in the main square of the town. Are they there to buy some fish, or are they there to watch a hanging? I think more likely the latter. I'm really happy with the way these have come out. They will blend really, really nicely into my existing Tomb King's armies, but those cobblestone bases will really make them work within the setting of the Mordheim terrain I've made as well. This was a relatively quick paint job. These are all very much tabletop standard miniatures for use in an army, and I got lots of stuff to do, and it'd be nice to sort of turn them into mini character pieces, but some of these miniatures are showing their age now, as much as I'm very, very fond of them, so it wasn't really worth turning each thing into a massive project, and it was fun getting these on the table in relatively quick time. The giant scorpions are a little bit ropey if you look super, super close, but they definitely do the job once painted up and on their bases. And the standard skellies are what the standard skellies are, but again, by painting these, I'm adding to the ranks of my Tomb King army. Very happy with the Tomb Guardians. They look pretty good, and I'll be adding those to Tomb Guard when GW hopefully releases them as part of the release for the old world. I'd love to know what you think of the Acolytes. I was pretty happy with the way they came out. I like the mini kit bash that I did with them. I think that works. I don't know what Acolytes really should be. They only exist in Mordheim as far as I'm aware, so I may well have misinterpreted them, but I'm pretty happy to have these kind of flowing robes and add skeleton bodies to it. I wasn't sure whether they were supposed to be a different kind of undead or even living that have been called to the thrall of the Nekakara magic. I'm not sure, but these will do, and I may well end up using in my Tomb King army as champions or something like that. I really like the old Lich Priest sculpt as well. It was fun adding him to the army along with the Tomb King. He will definitely see use in Mordheim, and I do wonder whether he'll end up seeing more use in the main Tomb King army for the old world than the Tomb King does himself. I definitely prefer the sculpt for the Lich Priest, and I feel that there will be lots of new miniatures that may well push these to the sidelines as the new game comes out, but it was great fun painting these old classics while I had the chance. Let me know what you think. Are you working on a Mordheim Warband yourself at the moment? I've got more planned on the way. I can't do my Bretonnian one yet because I'll be waiting for the Bretonnian Footnights to release next year, so they'll probably be last on my little list. I've got Undead sitting in a box ready to do as well, but that's very similar to this, so I think I'm going to do my Witch Hunters next, which was my initial plan. I'll talk about the bases that I found that I've printed off to use for these projects as part of that video as well, so if anyone's interested in those cobblestone bases and the STL, I will talk about it in that next video, which will be coming up in the next week or two, and I'm looking forward to getting started on those. If you've enjoyed the video, if you have, please do give us a like and maybe consider subscribing to the channel if you've not already. There's going to be lots more Mordheim themed videos on the channel, and there's lots of Warhammer Old World themed videos and painting tutorials as well, so please go and check those out, and lots of other things from other game systems including historical periods, so please go and take a look. But thank you very much for watching, take care, and I'll catch you soon.